After 3 hours cooking my wife's anniversary dinner, she walked in with her friends and said, "Stop trying to be romantic. It's pathetic. You look desperate." I set down the wine and started blowing out every candle, one by one. The room went completely silent. Her sister looked mortified. Her best friend stared at the floor. But something had fundamentally shifted inside me during those 30 seconds of public humiliation. "What are you doing?" she asked, her confident tone wavering slightly. "Stopping," I replied, gathering up the flowers I'd bought. "You just taught me something valuable. Romance is pathetic when it's one-sided. So, I'm done being pathetic." I walked past all three of them, tossed the flowers in the trash, and ordered pizza instead. "We can eat like roommates from now on. Pepperoni or cheese?" The confusion on her face was priceless. She'd expected me to apologize, to scramble, to explain myself. Instead, I'd called her bluff in front of an audience. That night, she tried the usual damage control about overreacting and having a bad day. But I'd heard her perfectly the first time. Message received. Here's what my wife didn't know about the man she'd just humiliated. I'm a senior forensic accountant at one of the city's largest firms, earning $127,000 annually. I spend my days analyzing financial patterns, documenting evidence, and building bulletproof cases that stand up in court. My specialty is untangling complex financial relationships and exposing the truth through methodical analysis. I've helped dozens of clients navigate divorces, business disputes, and asset recovery cases. I understand exactly how marriages work as financial partnerships and what happens when those partnerships dissolve. More importantly, I'd been quietly documenting our financial relationship for months, not out of suspicion, but out of professional habit. Every romantic gesture, every dinner date, every weekend trip was recorded in my personal expense tracking system with timestamps, receipts, and categorized entries. 5 years of data showing a crystal clear pattern. I paid for approximately 78% of our shared expenses, while she contributed 22%. I covered all entertainment, most meals, all gifts, all travel, and the majority of household expenses beyond basic utilities. My income puts me in the top 15% of earners in our city. I own 60% of our home's equity, since I'd provided the entire $85,000 down payment and covered most mortgage payments. Our joint accounts showed deposits from my salary, covering her shortfalls month after month. I had documentation proving I'd subsidized her lifestyle to the tune of roughly $47,000 over 3 years. Every dinner at expensive restaurants, every weekend getaway, every piece of jewelry, every surprise gift, all meticulously tracked in spreadsheets that would make any divorce attorney salivate. She earned $52,000 as a marketing coordinator, but she'd grown comfortable letting me handle the financial heavy lifting while she enjoyed the benefits. What she'd just done was declare war on someone who had both the professional skills and financial independence to win decisively. She wanted to find out what romance looked like when it wasn't subsidized by someone she considered pathetic. The next morning, I implemented what I privately called Operation Roommate. I didn't bring her coffee in bed like I had every weekend for 5 years. When she came downstairs expecting her usual service, I was already finishing my cup. "Coffee's in the kitchen," I said, without looking up from my newspaper. She stared, waiting for me to jump up and serve her. When I didn't move, she huffed and made her own coffee. I could feel her watching me, trying to figure out if this was punishment or some kind of game. It wasn't. It was clarity. For the first time in years, I saw our marriage for what it really was, a one-person performance where I was both the actor and the entire audience. That afternoon, she tested my resolve by mentioning how her coworker's husband had surprised her with concert tickets, clearly fishing for me to do something similar. Instead of taking the bait, I just nodded. That's nice for her. The look on her face was fascinating, like she'd just realized her favorite puppet had cut its own strings. By Sunday night, she was getting antsy. No flowers, no surprise dinner plans, no romantic movie suggestions. Just me reading my book, completely content in my own space. "Are you going to stay mad forever?" she finally asked. "I'm not mad," I replied. "I'm just not pathetic anymore. Big difference." That's when I saw the first crack in her confidence. She'd gotten so comfortable with me chasing her that she'd forgotten what it felt like when I wasn't. The first week of my new approach was like watching a behavioral psychology experiment unfold. She actually seemed relieved initially. No more surprise lunches at her office costing $35 each. No more random flower deliveries at $45 weekly. No more texts asking about her day. She got exactly what she'd asked for, and at first, she was thriving. I watched her tell her mother over the phone, "He's finally growing up and giving me some space. It's so much better this way." She said it loud enough for me to hear, probably expecting some kind of reaction. I just kept folding laundry like she was discussing the weather. But here's what she didn't anticipate. When I stopped being romantic, I didn't just stop with flowers and fancy dinners. I stopped with everything that wasn't absolutely necessary. No more good morning kisses, no more asking about her weekend plans, no more caring if she got home late or where she'd been. She was getting the complete package of what she'd requested. My forensic accounting background had taught me to approach problems systematically. So I created a new personal expense tracking system, specifically for our post-anniversary relationship. Every shared expense would be documented and split exactly 50-50. Every financial interaction would be recorded with the same precision I use for court cases. I set up automatic Venmo requests for her half of utilities, groceries, and any shared activities. The first test came when she mentioned wanting to try that new expensive restaurant downtown. In the old dynamic, I would have made reservations and happily covered the $200 bill. This time, I suggested we check if they took separate checks first. Her face went through several interesting expressions. "Since when do we worry about separate checks?" "Since we started being practical about what marriage actually is. Isn't that what you wanted?" I also canceled the standing flower order I'd maintained for 3 years. $12 weekly might not sound like much, but it adds up to $624 annually. Money I was now saving by not being pathetic. By day 10, the cracks started showing. "Are you going to ask me about my presentation today?" she said one morning, clearly fishing. "Do you want to tell me about it?" "Well, it went well," she said, waiting for follow-up questions that never came. "Good for you." I went back to checking my phone. The silence that followed was beautiful. She stood there for a full minute, probably waiting for me to engage, to show interest, to be the attentive husband she'd been taking for granted. When it became clear I wasn't going to play that role anymore, she grabbed her purse and left without another word. That evening, she tried a different approach. She cooked dinner, which was unusual since I'd been handling most of our meals for years. Nothing special, just pasta with store-bought sauce. But she presented it like she'd solved world hunger. "I made dinner," she announced, clearly expecting praise. "Thanks," I said, serving myself and sitting down. No compliments, no appreciation speech, just acknowledgement. When she mentioned the groceries cost $47, I immediately Venmo'd her $23.50 for my half. The weekend brought the real test. Saturday morning, she announced she was going shopping with friends. In the old days, I would have asked where and when she'd be back, maybe offered to pick her up. This time, I just said, "Have fun." She lingered by the door, clearly expecting more engagement. When it didn't come, she tried again. "I might be late." "Okay." "Like, really late." "Understood." She left frustrated, and I spent the day doing exactly what I wanted. I fixed that leaky faucet I'd been putting off, organized my tools, and read an entire book without interruption. It was the most peaceful Saturday I'd had in months. When she returned with shopping bags totaling $340 according to her receipts, I didn't ask to see what she'd bought or offer the usual compliments. I was too busy calculating how much money I was saving by not subsidizing her retail therapy. My professional training kicked in during week 2. I started treating our relationship like a case study, documenting behavioral patterns and responses with the same methodical approach I used for financial fraud investigations. The data was fascinating. When I withdrew what she'd labeled as pathetic romantic attention, she immediately began exhibiting attention-seeking behaviors. Comments about male coworkers complimenting her outfit, mentions of her ex reaching out on social media, references to how attentive other husbands were compared to other men. Each comment was a fishing expedition, waiting for me to show jealousy, concern, or any sign that I still cared enough to fight for her. My response was the same every time. "That's interesting." Then I'd go back to whatever I was doing. The lack of reaction was driving her crazy. She'd gotten so used to my emotional investment that my indifference felt like living with a stranger, which, in many ways, I was becoming. I started documenting everything in a detailed log. Timestamps of conversations, her behavioral changes, financial transactions, everything. If this marriage was heading toward divorce court, I wanted bulletproof documentation of exactly what had transpired and when. 3 weeks in, she was completely losing her mind. The woman who had confidently declared my romantic efforts pathetic was now desperately trying to get any kind of emotional reaction from me. It was like watching someone realize they'd thrown away a winning lottery ticket. I'd started hitting the gym again, not for her, but because I finally had time for myself. The $89 monthly membership I'd canceled 2 years ago because she complained about the expense was back in my budget. I was reading books I'd wanted to read for years. I'd even started learning guitar, something she'd always dismissed as a waste of time. The $200 guitar and $60 monthly lessons were investments in myself that I could finally afford without her criticism. One evening, she tried a more direct approach. She appeared in the bedroom doorway wearing lingerie like something out of a movie. In the old days, I would have dropped everything and showered her with compliments. This time, I glanced up from my book and said, "Going somewhere special?" The confusion on her face was priceless. "I thought we could spend some time together." "We spend time together every day. We live in the same house." "I mean together. I closed my book and looked at her properly. "If you want to have relations, just say so. We don't need costumes and performances anymore. Those were part of the romantic gestures you found pathetic." She deflated like a punctured balloon. This wasn't the script she'd written in her head. She wanted the old me, the one who would have swept her off her feet and made her feel desired. Instead, she got practical honesty. "You used to make me feel special," she said, her voice smaller than usual. "I used to try. You taught me it was pathetic, so I stopped." During week 3, the financial reality of our new arrangement started hitting her. When her car needed a $400 repair, she asked if I could help cover it like I always had. I suggested she set up a payment plan with the mechanic. When she wanted to go to her friend's birthday dinner at an upscale restaurant, I asked if we were splitting the bill before making reservations. When she mentioned wanting new clothes for a work event, I didn't offer to take her shopping like I used to. The woman who had grown accustomed to a lifestyle subsidized by someone she considered pathetic was discovering what her actual budget looked like. Her $52,000 salary, after taxes and her personal expenses, left very little room for the luxuries she'd taken for granted. 1 month in, she finally cracked completely. It happened on a Thursday evening when I came home from the gym. She was sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread everywhere, clearly waiting for me. This wasn't casual. This was an ambush. "We need to talk," she said before I'd even set my gym bag down. "About what?" "About this, whatever this is that you're doing." I grabbed a water bottle from the fridge and leaned against the counter. "I'm not doing anything. I'm just existing, same as you." "No, you're punishing me. You're being vindictive and petty because your feelings got hurt." That's when I knew we were about to have the conversation that would define everything. She'd finally dropped the pretense and shown me who she really was underneath all the manipulation. "My feelings got hurt," I repeated slowly. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You humiliated me in front of your friends, called 5 years of romantic gestures pathetic, and now that I've stopped doing those things, I'm the one being petty." "You're taking it too far." "I'm taking what too far? Not buying you flowers, not planning surprise dates, not telling you how beautiful you look every morning. Which part of stopping the pathetic behavior is too far?" She stood up, her voice getting louder. "You know exactly what you're doing. You're withholding affection to manipulate me." I almost laughed. "I'm not withholding anything. I'm just not giving you something you never valued in the first place. You can't withdraw money from an account you already closed." "That's not what I meant when I said those things." "Then what did you mean? Because I've been trying to figure that out for weeks." She started pacing, and I could see the real her emerging. The mask was slipping, and what was underneath wasn't pretty. "I meant you were being too much, too intense, too needy, like you couldn't exist without my approval. And now I exist just fine without your approval. Problem solved. But now you don't care about anything I do." There it was. the truth she'd been dancing around for a month. She didn't want me to stop caring. She wanted me to care silently, desperately, without bothering her with the evidence of that caring. "You're right," I said calmly. "I don't care what you do, because caring about someone who thinks caring is pathetic is exhausting." "I never said caring was pathetic. You said my romantic gestures were pathetic. Those gestures were how I showed I cared. So, by extension, yes, you did call my caring pathetic." She was getting frantic now, realizing that her words had consequences she hadn't anticipated. "Fine," she exploded. "You want the truth? Sometimes your romantic stuff made me feel suffocated, like you needed constant validation that I had loved you back. It felt desperate." Now we were getting somewhere. The real conversation was finally happening. "So you felt suffocated by being loved," I said. "That's your complaint." "I felt suffocated by being needed so much. There's a difference." "Not really. Love without need is just friendship with benefits. But I understand now. You wanted to be wanted, not needed. You wanted to feel special without having to make me feel special in return." Her face went red. "That's not fair. Isn't it? When's the last time you did something romantic for me? When's the last time you surprised me with anything? When's the last time you made me feel like I was more than just a roommate who pays most of the bills?" The silence that followed was deafening. She couldn't answer because we both knew the answer was never. I'd been the only one investing in the romantic side of our marriage for years. "I show love differently," she finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. "How? By accepting everything I do for you without reciprocation? By criticizing the way I express love while offering nothing in return?" Another silence. She was scrambling, trying to come up with examples that didn't exist. "I cook sometimes. I clean. I manage the household. Those are adult responsibilities, not expressions of love. Roommates do those things." She sat back down, deflated. For the first time in our marriage, she was forced to confront the reality of what she'd brought to the relationship versus what she'd taken from it. I pulled out my phone and opened the expense tracking app I'd been using. "Let me show you some numbers," I said, turning the screen toward her. "In the past year alone, I've spent $8,400 on what you called pathetic romantic gestures. Flowers, surprise dinners, weekend trips, gifts for no reason, concert tickets, theater shows. That's $700 per month of my income dedicated to making you feel special." Her eyes widened as she saw the detailed breakdown. "Now, let me ask you this. How much have you spent on romantic gestures for me in the same time period?" She couldn't answer because we both knew the number was zero. "I've been subsidizing a lifestyle you've grown comfortable with, while you've contributed nothing equivalent in return. And when I finally stopped, you called it punishment. But here's the thing. I'm not punishing you. I'm just not rewarding you anymore." The conversation continued for another hour, but the damage was done. She'd finally been honest about what she wanted, all the benefits of being loved without any of the responsibility of loving back. She wanted me to care secretly, to pine for her from a distance while pretending I didn't need her emotional reciprocation. Over the next 2 weeks, she tried everything. Love bombing with elaborate meals I had to pay half for. Sudden interest in my hobbies that felt performative. Attempts at physical intimacy that seemed more like negotiations than genuine affection. But I'd already checked out emotionally. The man who used to beg for her approval was gone, replaced by someone who knew his worth. Her sister called me during this period, having heard about our problems from my wife. "She says you've changed," she told me over coffee. "She's worried about you." "I have changed," I replied. "I stopped accepting less than I deserve." "She thinks you're being cruel." "I think 5 years of one-sided romance was cruel, but I'm done being cruel to myself." Her sister was quiet for a moment. "She never appreciated what she had, did she?" "No. And now she's finding out what life looks like without it." 2 days later, I found divorce papers on the kitchen table. She'd made her choice, and to her credit, she'd made it cleanly. No drama, no last-ditch emotional manipulation, just a quiet acknowledgement that she couldn't live with the man I'd become, and I wouldn't go back to being the man I'd been. "I can't do this," she said when I found her packing. "I can't be married to someone who doesn't love me." "I never said I didn't love you," I replied. "You don't act like you love me." "I don't act desperate for your approval. There's a difference." She stopped packing and looked at me. What's the point of love without romance? What's the point of romance without respect? She had no answer for that. And we both knew why. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly smooth. My meticulous financial documentation made asset division straightforward. Since I'd paid for 78% of our shared expenses and owned 60% of the home equity, the settlement reflected those contributions. She kept her car, her personal belongings, and received a small cash settlement. I kept the house, my retirement accounts, and my self-respect. The final cost of the divorce was $8,500 in legal fees, less than I'd spent on romantic gestures in a single year. My attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia, who specialized in high-asset divorces, was impressed by my documentation. "Most people come to me with boxes of receipts and emotional stories," she said. "You came with a forensic analysis. It made my job much easier." 6 months later, I was sitting in my own space, a house that was now entirely mine. The mortgage payment was easily manageable on my salary alone. The guitar playing was getting better. I'd progressed to intermediate level. The gym routine was solid. I'd lost 25 pounds and gained muscle definition I hadn't seen since college. My book collection was growing, and I'd started a small investment portfolio with the money I was no longer spending on someone who didn't appreciate it. I'd started dating again, but this time with clear boundaries and realistic expectations. The difference was remarkable. When someone appreciates genuine romantic gestures, they reciprocate. When they don't, I move on without a second thought. I'd learned to recognize the signs of someone who wants to be pursued versus someone who wants to participate in a relationship. My ex-wife texted me once, 3 months after the divorce was finalized. She said she'd been thinking about our conversation regarding romance and respect, and she finally understood what I'd meant. She said she was sorry and asked if we could talk. I texted back, "I hope you find someone who can give you what you're looking for." What I didn't say was that I hoped she'd learn to give back what she was looking for. But that wasn't my problem anymore. Her best friend, who had witnessed the anniversary dinner humiliation, reached out to me 6 months later. She was going through her own relationship issues and wanted advice. "I watched what happened between you two," she said. "I never realized how one-sided it was until I saw you stop trying. My boyfriend does the same things for me that you did for her, and I've been taking it for granted." "The lesson isn't to stop appreciating romantic gestures," I told her. "The lesson is to reciprocate them." A year later, I heard through mutual friends that my ex-wife was dating someone new. According to the reports, she was frustrated because he wasn't romantic enough and didn't make enough effort. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd trained herself to expect romance without reciprocation. And now she was discovering that most men won't provide that dynamic indefinitely. Meanwhile, I was in a relationship with someone who brought me flowers just because she saw ones she thought I'd like, who planned surprise dates, who told me I looked handsome without being prompted, who contributed equally to our shared expenses and never made me feel pathetic for showing affection. The funny thing about stopping pathetic behavior is that it doesn't just change how others see you, it changes how you see yourself. I'd spent 5 years trying to be worthy of someone who didn't think I was worth the effort. Now I knew my worth, and I wasn't willing to negotiate it downward for anyone. The man who used to beg for love was gone. In his place was someone who knew the difference between being loved and being tolerated, and that man would never settle for tolerance again. Looking back, that anniversary dinner was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because it ended my marriage, but because it ended my willingness to accept less than I deserved. Sometimes the most pathetic thing you can do is continue trying to win over someone who's already decided you're not worth winning. I learned that romance isn't pathetic when it's mutual. Desperation is pathetic. One-sided effort is pathetic. But genuine romantic love between two people who value each other, that's the opposite of pathetic. That's what everyone deserves. And now I had it.